Hello, my friends and my colleagues and my students and my fans. Today I will talk about, as I promised you before, when I was talking about the limbic system in health and disease, that I will talk about hypothalamic problems and the hypothalamic dysfunction. Let me first remind you of about the hypothalamus. As I mentioned before, the hypothalamus is a very small but at the same time very important organ in the body and a very important structure in the center of the brain. The hypothalamus is, as I mentioned before, is a part of the diencephalon, which is a part of the forebrain or the prosencephalon. When I was talking yesterday about the limbic system, and the limbic system belongs to both the telencephalon and the diencephalon of the forebrain, and it is the core of the forebrain. And I mentioned that the hypothalamus is part of the limbic system of the brain and is part of the diencephalon. And the hypothalamus is its importance is that it is the connector between the nervous and the endocrine systems of the body. That's why it lies between the thalamus, which belongs to or which is a part of the diencephalon, and the pituitary gland, which is the master endocrine gland of the body, controlling the lower endocrine organs and glands, including the thyroid, the adrenal, and the gonads, that are the ovaries in females and the testicles in males, as I mentioned before. So the hypothalamus is the connector between the endocrine and the nervous systems. And it is actually the moderator of the signals and the interplay between the nervous system from its highest centers in the cerebral cortex and between the endocrine, the neuroendocrine axis, which is formed by the hypothalamus and the pituitary, which we call them the hypothalamo-pituitary unit or the hypothalamo-pituitary axis, which represents the neuroendocrine control of the other endocrine organs, the major endocrine organs in the body, including the thyroid, the adrenal, and the gonads, as I mentioned. And this is by the fact that the hypothalamus directly and indirectly affects the hormonal regulations and the different hormonal systems in the body, directly and indirectly through its effects on the pituitary gland, through its links with the anterior pituitary, the adenohypophysis, and the posterior pituitary, the neurohypophysis. So this is the definition of the hypothalamus, as I mentioned. It is a part of the nervous system, which is very small, lies in the center of the brain, and anatomically belongs to the diencephalon, which is formed of the, again, I will repeat, the thalamus, hypothalamus, epithalamus, and subthalamus. So it is a part of the diencephalon of the brain, and the diencephalon is a part of the forebrain or the prosencephalon, together with the telencephalon, as I mentioned before, which gives rise to the cerebrum or the cerebral hemispheres. So it is the part of the limbic system, which is related and controls the emotions, as I mentioned yesterday when I was talking about the limbic system of the brain. So it is a part of the limbic system and part of the diencephalon and part of the neuroendocrine unit, which controls the endocrine organs and the hormonal systems in the body. And I mentioned that the hypothalamus, in short, plays a role in or controls or regulates the homeostasis of the body. That is the healthful, balanced bodily state, and the state of the body trying to keep its balance. This is called the homeostasis, that is keeping the internal environment of the body steady under different conditions and balanced under different condition. So keeping the internal environment of the body or the internal milieu of the body under healthful, balanced condition is the function of the hypothalamus. And this is the homeostasis of the body, which is the main function of the hypothalamus. And the hypothalamus, in fact, keeps the homeostasis through both its endocrine function, controlling the pituitary function and the pituitary hormonal secretions, and through its non-endocrine part. I will speak about the endocrine role first of the hypothalamus. That is the relation between the hypothalamus and the pituitary, and there are circuits between both which control the hormonal secretions, and these include endocrine, paracrine, and autocrine factors, or endocrine, paracrine, and autocrine circuits between and within the hypothalamus and the pituitary. We all know that the hypothalamus, it is connected with the anterior pituitary through what we call the hypothalamo-pituitary portal circulation, and with the posterior pituitary or the neurohypophysis through the hypothalamo-neurohypophyseal tracts. So there is hypothalamo-neurohypophyseal tract between the hypothalamus and the posterior pituitary, and the hypothalamo pituitary portal circulation between the hypothalamus and the anterior pituitary. So these are which are the two components of the pituitary gland. So the hypothalamus is connected with both, and it is responsible for the secretion of the antidiuretic hormone and the oxytocin, which are transmitted to the posterior pituitary and then secreted. The antidiuretic hormone, which plays a role in antidiuresis and the absorption of water by the kidneys back into the blood. So it is important in the water and sodium homeostasis, and that's why it keeps the body fluids balanced. And this is one of its important functions, keeping the body fluids balanced. That is the interstitial and the extracellular and intracellular fluid compartments. This is also under the control of the hypothalamus. And the second hormone also, which is released into the posterior pituitary, is the oxytocin, which plays a role in the expression of the breast milk and has other functions related to temperature and eating, and also to the contraction of the uterus, the oxytocin. So these two important hormones, they are secreted by the hypothalamus and then transmitted and released into the posterior pituitary. The other hormones which are secreted from the hypothalamus and control the anterior pituitary are the gonadotropins, which control the FSH and LH, the thyrotropin, which controls the TSH secreted by the pituitary, and we sometimes abbreviate as TRH. So the GRH, the gonadotropin, and the TRH, the thyrotropin, and also the corticotropin, which is the CRH, the hormone which controls the ACTH of the pituitary gland. So these three hormones, the corticotropin, the thyrotropin, and the gonadotropin, they are secreted by the hypothalamus. Also, it secretes some hormones which affect the prolactin secretion by the pituitary gland, and also secretes chemical substances and hormones which modulate the growth hormone secretion by the pituitary gland, which plays a role in growth of children and also has some functions and issues to play in also adults. So as we see, it controls growth, controls lactation, controls thyroid, controls the adrenal, controls the gonads through the corticotropin, the gonadotropin, the thyrotropin, the hormones which affect the prolactin and the growth hormone released from the hypothalamus. So this shows that the importance of the hypothalamus as what we call the endocrine gland's main switchboard. The hypothalamus is the endocrine system's main switchboard, directly and indirectly through its connection with the pituitary gland and through its effects on the pituitary glands, controlling the other lower endocrine glands and the hormonal circuits in the body. So